Good morning and welcome to our coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. I am Bukola Koka, and coming up on the program, car crashes into barricade near Israeli embassy in Tokyo. Man arrested. U.S. President Joe Biden says he made it clear to Israel occupying Gaza would be a mistake. Israeli army releases video set to show Hamas weapons command center at Al-Shifa hospital. Welcome once again. A man in his 50s has been arrested after a car crashed into a barricade near the entrance of the Israeli embassy in Tokyo. The incident, which occurred on Thursday, left one police officer injured. Officials at the embassy were not immediately available for comment, while the police declined to speak for the time. Police officers blocked the area around where a black car with damage to its front headlights and panel appeared to have crashed, while the road was strewn with debris. Several pro-Palestinian demonstrations have been held outside Israeli embassies around the world in recent weeks, including in Tokyo, in protest against Israel's bombardment of the Gaza Strip. Protesters took to the streets of San Francisco ahead of a meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping, obstructing some entrances to the APEC conference. Opponents of Xi hope hundreds of people will demonstrate against Chinese policies, while others are using the meeting as a forum for global issues such as the Israel-Hamas war. Roughly 150 people gathered at an intersection outside the security zone at the city's convention center. The group aimed to block conference attendees from passing through the intersection and formed a human chain that diverted some commuters and delegates.
Together in a strong show of solidarity with various sectors of society, ranging from climate activists, women's activists, human rights defenders, folks fighting for their national liberation struggles, and labor, to show to the world that this CEO summit being hosted by APEC is doing nothing to address the issues that people are facing around the world today.
So we're out here today to stop APEC from happening because it's just a bunch of corrupt, rich CEOs that are coming out here learning how to exploit from one another.
I mean, there's 100 reasons. I guess the most urgent on my mind is the fact that, you know, right now, Biden and Israel are committing a genocide in Gaza. We're seeing, you know, 11,000 people murdered, 4,500 children. They bombed schools, hospitals, churches, mosques. They shelled even the aid convoys from Egypt.
U.S. President Joe Biden believes that a two-state solution is the only answer to the Israel-Palestine debacle. He explained he made this position clear in a conversation with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, adding that occupying Gaza would be a big mistake.
I made it clear.
Speaking to reporters, he also said he's working hard to free Hamas October 7th hostages.
And they still think that, at least as of this point, they still thought. I made it clear to the Israelis that to Bibi and to his war cabinet, that I think the only ultimate answer here is a two-state solution that's real. We got to get to the point where there is an ability to be able to even talk without worrying about whether or not we're just dealing with, they're dealing with Hamas that's going to engage in the same activities they did over the past, on the 7th. So but I can't tell, I'm not a fortune teller, I can't tell you how long it's going to last. But I can tell you I don't think it ultimately ends until there's a two-state solution. I made it clear to the Israelis, I think it's a big mistake for them to think they're going to occupy Gaza and maintain Gaza. I don't think that works. With regard to when is this going to stop, I think it's going to stop when when Hamas no longer maintains the capacity to murder and abuse and just do horrific things to the Israelis. and they still think that, at least as of this morning, they still thought they could. You have a circumstance where the first war crime is being committed by Hamas by having their headquarters, their military, hidden under a hospital. And that's a fact. That's what's happened. Israel did not go in with large number of troops, did not raid, did not rush everything down. They've gone in, and they've gone in with their soldiers carrying weapons, their guns.
The United Nations Security Council is calling for urgent and extended humanitarian pauses in fighting between Israel and Palestinian Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip. This is in order to have a sufficient number of days to allow aid access. The United States, Russia and Britain, who are council veto powers, abstained from Wednesday's vote on the resolution drafted by Malta. The remaining 12 members voted in favor.
The Security Council should have called for a ceasefire a long time ago. It should have called for a ceasefire now. It should have heeded the call by the UN and every humanitarian organization on earth calling for a humanitarian ceasefire, including the Secretary General of the United Nations. It should have been convinced that there is no military solution, especially one that relies on the commission of atrocities, and it should have advanced political ones. Gaza bleeds, death, devastation, destructions everywhere. No one was spared. Not our children, not our women, not our elderly, not our civilians. Nothing was spared, not our hospitals, not the UN shelters and schools, not our water plants, not our homes. The bombings and incursions must stop now. Humanitarian aid must come in now, not drop by drop, just to pretend that the criminal siege has been lifted, but effectively bringing it to an end. Fuel must come in now. Thousands of lives, millions of lives hang in the balance.
There is no clearer proof that Israel is doing everything possible to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza, while Hamas is doing everything possible to make it worse. Council members, increasing the suffering of Gazan civilians is an integral part of Hamas's vicious strategy. Hamas's goal is to intensify and deteriorate the humanitarian situation in Gaza in order to broadcast Palestinian hardship to the world, and by doing so, exploit this very body to tie Israel's hands. Hamas is solely responsible for the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and they have weaponized it to prevent Israel from defending itself. Israel does not need a resolution to remind us to adhere to international law. Israel always adheres to international law. Hamas, the party that will refuse to accept this resolution, will not even bother reading it. Hence, this resolution does nothing to contribute to the situation on the ground. Bringing our hostages home is Israel's top priority. And seeing as Security Council resolutions hold no sway with terrorists, Israel will continue to do whatever it takes to accomplish this goal. As much as we all wish to believe that this resolution and this council could have an impact on genocidal terrorists, the situation on the ground proves otherwise. The reality is that Israel has no choice but to continue with our mission to obliterate Hamas's capabilities and bring our hostages home. Should Hamas choose to lay down their arms, turn themselves in and hand over the hostages unscathed, this war would end immediately. Sadly, this is not Hamas's modus operandi.
Also, at the international scene, the World Health Organization is calling that the Israeli military incursion into Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza is totally unacceptable. Israeli troops entered Shifa, Gaza's biggest hospital, on Wednesday as part of their assault on the Palestinian territory. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus told a press conference in Geneva that patients and staff must be protected even if hospitals are used for military purposes.
Israel's military incursion into Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City is totally unacceptable. Hospitals are not battlegrounds. We're extremely worried for the safety of staff and patients. Protecting them is paramount. WHO has lost contact with health workers at Al-Shifa hospital. But one thing is clear. Under international humanitarian law, health facilities, health workers, ambulances, and patients must be safeguarded and protected against all acts of war. Not only that, they must be actively protected during military planning.
We know that currently what we have been informed is that 34 premature children are still alive, as per latest reports, and there were 39 to begin with. We were informed that 82 bodies were buried in a mass grave today. Remaining 80 dead bodies remain unburied. We got informed that hemodialysis is done for 45 patients for 2 hours only, that there is no central oxygen, water, power, and fuel.
Much has been made of the importance of the need to provide opportunities for commercial aid to get into Gaza. By the way, once again, that's a very common feature of the aspects of an urgent humanitarian program. Sudan was exactly the same. We had very similar points made in the early days. Do you remember the evacuation from Khartoum? But it's particularly important in Gaza because of the total dependency of a population which cannot move outside the territory. So more crossing points, including that Kerem Shalom, which used to carry more than 60% of the truckloads going through before this conflict, this recent conflict started. So please, Kerem Shalom, please Israel, give us that for our crossing point.
British opposition leader, Labour leader Keir Starmer, appeared under pressure when 56 of his lawmakers, including several of his policy team, voted with another opposition party to demand that the government call for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict. The so-called amendment, a proposed addition to the government's legislative agenda for the next year to call for a ceasefire in the violence, did not pass, and so will not become law. But the backing of so many Labour lawmakers shows the levels of disquiet in the party over the Middle East conflict. Nearly a third of Labour's 198 lawmakers backed the amendment introduced by the Scottish National Party, which said, "We call on the government to join with the international community in urgently pressing all parties to agree to an immediate ceasefire."
Thank you. The ayes to the right, 125. The noes to the left, 293. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Order, order.
Israel has admitted its forces are operating in and around Gaza's biggest hospital, Al-Shifa. According to the army, this is a chief objective in its campaign to destroy Palestinian Hamas militants. It adds that the Hamas army stored weapons and ran a command center in tunnels beneath the buildings. Israeli troops forced their way into Al-Shifa hospital in the early hours of Wednesday and spent the day deepening their search. An Israeli army video shows automatic weapons, grenades, ammunition and flak jacket, it says, were recovered from an undisclosed building within the complex.
Another MRI machine where behind it we also found contraband. I am in the Shifa hospital, as you can see from the sign behind me, and as you can clearly see from the building. We are going to do a one-shot video. One shot, no editing, of all of the evidence that we have found just now in this building of the Shifa hospital. So we're inside the MRI center of the Shifa hospital. Israeli troops breached here a few hours ago, and we have cleared the area, make sure that it's safe. And a few of the most interesting things that we have found totally confirm, without any doubt, that Hamas systematically uses hospitals in their military operations in violation of international law. And what we have found, I think, is only the tip of the iceberg. Let me show you a few examples. Security cameras have been obstructed. All of the security cameras are covered, and this isn't the only one. You'll see the rest of them here. Follow me as we go in, and we will see the MRI center and see the weapons that Hamas has hidden inside. This is where patients come in order to get MRI services. We'll proceed into a more secluded area. And the lighting here is out, so we're using flashlights. We're now, as you can see, in an MRI room. I don't know when this was used the last time. But it is definitely an MRI machine. And if you follow me behind the MRI machine, I'll show you what our troops exposed just minutes ago. In military terms, this is a grab bag, grab and go of a Hamas combatant. And if you zoom in and we get some light over here, what you'll be able to see is military equipment. There is an AK-47, there are cartridges, ammo, there are grenades in here, of course uniform, and all of this was hidden very conveniently, secretly behind the MRI machine. On the other side, we found a backpack with what appears to be very important intelligence, including a laptop, and we'll show you that momentarily. Let's go see the next room. And the last item, which I'm sure will be very interesting to analyze, is a laptop. We found it in the MRI room. This is how the laptop looks. I don't know who it belonged to, but now it is being analyzed by our intel people. Tactical radio communications, which we will analyze. Lots of disks.
You're still on to our coverage of Israel-Hamas. Well, we're now beginning our first conversation for the day as Dr. Tony Agbons, a senior lecturer at the Anglia Ruskin University, London, joins us virtually from London. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Agbons.
Good morning, Bukola.
Good morning, sir. Very, very tempting indeed to begin to look at what we just saw, the evidence, more evidence being presented by the Israeli Defense Forces. But let's start with, a scrutiny of Hamas's ideology. One of the first few stories that we read today was about a car ramming into the Israeli embassy in Tokyo, and a man has been arrested. How dangerous is Hamas's ideology, not just to Israel and the Palestinian people, but also to the rest of the world, in the light of these kinds of circumstances that now seem to be springing up in different parts of the world?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Watching all that, your channel have been showing since I joined the studio, it's really, really heartbreaking to see the level of carnage and destruction of life that has been going on since October 7, when this crisis began. And you just talk of the incident in Japan. There was another incident in another country about a week ago where somebody was killed as well. So, and you know that the Hamas group, resistance force, militia, and countries like Israel, the US, the UK, the EU, and their allies have labeled them a terrorist group. So they believe they are fighting for a cause, the liberation of their people, and the ideology is, the existence of the nation of Israel. Israel cannot exist, and Israel on their part are saying that they deserve, their homeland, they can live in their country. So that has been the story in the last many decades of the crisis between Israel and Palestine, and especially since 2007, when the Hamas group took over the leadership of Gaza, and they began to rule and reign there. So it's very, very sad to see the level of carnage that has been ongoing.
Now, if indeed that you agree that this ideology is different, and this has been supported by a former member of the Israeli Defense Forces who argues that even if you decimate Hamas's military capability, you cannot defeat its ideology. How does Israel and perhaps the entire international community leadership take responsibility for the development of an alternative ideology, perhaps especially in the Arab world?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. The use of military force alone is not going to solve this crisis in the long term. In the short term, perhaps, but in the long term, definitely not. I think both sides need to come to the table and start to discuss. And like the US President Joe Biden have said, even though that didn't go really well with the Israelis at this point, because they feel that they have been hard done by following the attack that took place on October 7th. So the US, again, have proposed a two-state solution. I think that is going to be the long-term solution to this crisis, because I was, reading some report yesterday, and the Israelis are saying, they are saying that they will take security responsibility for Gaza after this onslaught. So that is not going to solve it. So because an ideology is, like we all know in international relations, an ideology is difficult to destroy, because it's a thing of the mind, it's a belief, and people will not just change their ideology. Generations that have, grown up in both Israel and Palestine, with hatred, you can't just, these things cannot just be wiped away, by military fiat. So some of us still believe, and I know a lot of people believe, and that is the way to go, that both sides needs to come to the table. A ceasefire needs to come in place, although the Israelis are very much against that, and they are justifying their, continuous incursion into Gaza, and that is why you see all they are doing in the hospitals, and justifiably so as well, because Intel has it that the Hamas group, they are using hospitals and schools as shield points where they hide weapons and for where they carry out attacks. So in the long run, I think it's a table discussion that will sort out all this.
It is indeed the consensus, wherever you turn, that a two-state solution is the way out of this age-long quagmire. So the U.S. President Joe Biden isn't particularly saying anything that is new, but he has said that he told the Israeli Defense Forces, the leadership of the government, that occupying Gaza would be a big mistake. Could the U.S. president had been more categorical about what he meant to say about his position about Israel's prosecution of this war? Is he in support or against?
Yeah, I think President Joe Biden, he's been in the game, in diplomatic game, for a very long time as an elder statesman. What he said to me was in very clear language, very clear communication. A two-state solution is the way to go. But I think why the Israelis are, really up against Joe Biden for that statement is because they feel that the military option they have taken now would definitely, help slow down Hamas' capability to attack them in future. But the way I look at the Israelis, defense forces, they are actually thinking of occupying Gaza. They want to occupy it. They want to, stay there for a while and probably stop, future attacks. But I think, like we saw in that United Nations meeting, Israel occupying Hamas is not going to be a solution. It will just be a temporary solution, and then we'll go back again to square one, and other attacks will happen. And the truth of the matter is that when you look at how crises, have taken place in other parts of the world, the fact that there is an occupation force in a locality does not mean that there will not be pockets of attacks. So we've seen that play out in other parts of the world, in Cambodia, in Myanmar, other regions of the world where you have an occupation force in place. So that taking over Gaza and occupying it, like the Israelis are thinking, is not the way to go at all.
I'd like to explore that a bit further. If there's time, I'll do that perhaps before the end of this conversation. But help us understand, if you can, what's happening in the British Parliament. Today, we woke up to the news that Labour leader, had 56 of his lawmakers, including several of his policy team, voting with the opposition party to demand a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict in the Gaza Strip. And, just days before now, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, sacked his Interior Minister, Sule Braverman. I hope I got her name correctly. How much of the conflict is dividing the Parliament? And does this suggest also that there is no unanimity in the position of the British Parliament on Israel's prosecution of this war?
Yeah, the UK Parliament, the drama that played out yesterday, the Labour leader Keir Starmer was really, kind of thrown under the bus by his MPs. As I speak to you, I think about 9 of his front benchers, have resigned their roles. Some shadow ministers are saying that they are leaving their positions. And again, it goes back to what we've been saying in this conversation this morning: the heated and the kind of puzzle-like nature of this Israel-Palestinian crisis. So a lot of the British MPs, listening to their constituents, believe that it's time for a ceasefire. But looking at the way the United Kingdom, strong ally of Israel, supports the Israelis, it's been really difficult, for even the British Prime Minister to outrightly condemn the attack of Israel, on Hamas. Although he has, said that Israel should carry out their operations in line with international norms. So that has been the case. So it's a very tight situation. It's a kind of a catch-22 scenario. So what happened yesterday with a lot of the Labour MPs defying their leader, was a surprise to many of us. But the MPs have said they are listening to their constituents. So it's brought a lot of division within the Labour Party as we speak. And even the UK Prime Minister, he did release a statement a few days ago, and he did categorically state that the Israelis should, weigh their options very well and work within the perimeter of international laws in their attack in Hamas, especially with the hospitals. But the Israelis, like we see from visuals, they are saying that the Hamas, they are using hospitals as a point for their military operations. So and they need to take those areas down. So those are the conflicting situation, and it's really dire. All what is happening is something that no one can really put a handle on. But we hope that both parties will come to the table and a ceasefire will be called very soon.
If you can answer this in a few words, is this suggestive of a possible fact that the Parliament, has MPs with Jewish and Palestinian roots, hence, it's encouraging this kind of division that we're seeing?
Yeah, there are quite a number of MPs from those regions. Yeah, you are very, very correct. Quite a number of them.
And that helps us to have a clearer understanding of what's happening. We want to thank you very much, Dr. Tony Agbons, a senior lecturer at the Anglia Ruskin University in London. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you, Bukola, and have a nice day.
And you too, sir. Still to come on the program, Families say enough is enough. Urge for hostage deal with Hamas to bring loved ones home. We'll have that story and more coming your way after the break. Join us again. Welcome back. Demonstrators and family members of Israeli hostages gathered in Tel Aviv, urging the government to take a hostage deal with Hamas in order to bring loved ones home. The armed wing of the Palestinian militant group Hamas has indicated readiness to release up to 70 women and children hostages in return for a 5-day truce and the release of 275 Palestinian women and children held in Israeli prisons. Netanyahu has so far rejected any talk of a ceasefire, saying he would only be willing to pause the fighting if all the hostages are freed.
We came to tell the government and the Minister of Defense that we want our loving families back home now. We don't have time to wait. Ohad is 9 years old. He just turned 9 on the 23rd of October. I don't want him to be back on his bar mitzvah when he'll be 13. We want them now.
Tonight we are trying to tell the Israeli government that enough is enough. Already 40 days went by, and I have 3 grandchildren and a daughter-in-law there in Gaza. One of my grandchildren is 4 years old. He doesn't know Hamas. He doesn't know time. He doesn't know nothing. He knows that he's deep in the black, without food, without any humanity for already 40 days. A kid of 4 years, for God's sake, save him. Let him go home now. The authority which is responsible for my family being captured in Gaza is the Israeli government. Any government in the world is supposed to protect its citizens. The Israeli government didn't do its duty. Therefore, it's the responsibility of the Israeli government to bring them back. I don't care how, I don't care about nothing. I want them back 30 days ago. It's already 40 days. They are there, and the Israeli government, according to me, is doing nothing. I don't want to hear stories. I want results, and there are no results.
Family members and doctors of all Israelis being held hostage by Hamas are urging their release and immediate medical assistance. Adva Ada says her 85-year-old grandmother, Yafa Ada, was running out of time, and 13-year-old Yagil Yakov, who has a peanut allergy, said every meal would be like a Russian roulette to him.
To the picture that was released.
We, physicians, made an oath to do everything to help people in need. We, as human beings, are obliged to the ancient imperative: do not stand by the blood of your fellow to see him or her dying. I, as a physician and as a human being, was obliged to stand up for them. I received the humble honor of leading a team of medical volunteers whose purpose is to protect the health of the hostages and their families. Innocent people were abducted, and I don't believe I say it, 40 days ago. 40 days. Among them are babies, children, women, men, the elderly, sick and injured people, people with disabilities and special needs. See them. Where are they? Who is treating them?
My name is Adva Adar. I'm the granddaughter of Yafa Adar. She's 85 years old and she was kidnapped from her house in Kibbutz Nir Oz. She's a mother of 3, a grandmother of 8, and a great-grandmother of 7. Her oldest grandson, Tamir, was also kidnapped from Kibbutz Nir Oz. My grandmother is ill. She's taking medication on a daily basis for her body system to function and to relieve a lot of pain she's suffering from. Thinking about her being held in tunnels without her medication breaks my heart. All the pain she needs to suffer without no relief, that's unhuman. I'm asking you to look at my grandmother's face and think about your own. Can you even imagine her being through this hell? I can't.
And joining us for more conversations on this is public affairs analyst Mr. Oluseyi Adeyemo. Mr. Adeyemo is speaking to us virtually from Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. Mr. Adeyemo, thank you for joining us and thank you for holding on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, and I'm sure that you've been watching that video. It can be truly heartbreaking, and it reminds us of the offer of release of 70 hostages by Hamas, the militant group, and in exchange for 5 days of truce. I wonder if this publication would do anything to cause both parties to come to a middle ground.
It's an unfortunate situation, and no life is smaller than the other. It's very worrisome because we're at the point where clearly human beings, as our nature, would always want to see things from our own end. So the Hamas, Palestinians all over the world see all of this from a particular angle, and they say, oh, the Israelis, Netanyahu is killing their people, children are being killed. They've taken over the biggest hospital in Gaza. They've taken over the water and all of that. Now, the Israelis, on their part, are saying our parents have been adopted. They've been out there for 40 days. Our government is not doing anything. And it's worrisome because, you see, when you really look at this critically, it speaks to the nature of human beings. And we always want to see things from our end. But my worry, and I think what we need to start to do, is to find a way of finding a truce, a middle ground, a situation where no human life must be allowed to be wasted. I've said this over and over here on this program. What Hamas did is horrible, is horrifying. They should not be allowed to leave. Now, the problem is, how do we go about it in a way that we're not killing hundreds of thousands of people? And at the end of the day, on the other side, Israelis are being seen as wicked and very, very, hard people who are just killing human beings for the fun of it.
How dangerous is it for these hostages if both sides refuse to agree to this offer?
It's very dangerous, obviously. I mean, we've just seen a very graphic, illustration of the fact that most of them are even sick. Some of them are living on special medication. And obviously, wherever they are right now is not conducive for them, is not the kind of, condition of life that they would really, really want to live in. And so it's definitely dangerous. And I mean, look at it. You're living in your home today, and all of a sudden, you've been taken out of it. Even if you're hale and healthy, nobody really wants to start to live under any form of condition that is not one that one really is used to. So it's obviously very dangerous. It's not something that should be allowed. And that's why I believe that as the Palestinians all over the world complain, they should also impress it on Hamas to release these people. Maybe if they release all of them, it will be easier for us to impress it on the Israelis to also, stop this bombardment and all of that. But I think, considering that they are the ones with the lower hand, because you have upper and lower hand, since it is clear that in this regard, they are the ones with the lower hands, I think the Palestinians should also put a lot of pressure
on Hamas to please release all of these people, because they were the ones in the first place who started all this fight, and they went
Perhaps I should make it
into it.
Mr. Adeyemo, perhaps I should make the question a bit clearer. Hamas has been known to prosecute this war in a fratricidal style. If a militant group has little scruples about sacrificing its own people, how dangerous is it for the lives of the Jewish hostages should they fail, both sides fail to come to an agreement?
I mean, that's what I'm trying to explain. It is very dangerous. I mean, truth of the matter is, we know that Hamas are militants. They're not people who one wants to have any dealings with, whatever shades or color. They're not known to be fair. They're not known to be people who are humane. They don't treat people like human beings. And so anybody who unfortunately finds themselves in their hands is obviously in a dangerous hands. And it's not a situation that anybody will pray for or want to have an experience of. So it is very dangerous, and it's not one that anybody would want to have a taste of.
Now, with hopes that they come to an agreement, let's look closely now at the evidence that the Israeli Defense Forces are presenting to the international community of its findings at the Al-Shifa hospital. But increasingly, regardless of what we've seen, the international community holds such with skepticism. How much more does the IDF need to present before the international community can be convinced that indeed Hamas is using, civilian infrastructure, to hide its weapons base?
We need hard facts. Unfortunately, they've been there for over 24 hours, and they've not been able to show any hard evidence that they found anyone. They have cameras, situated at the entrance of the hospital. So if there were anyone who is disguised as a doctor or as a patient, by now they should have discovered them. But unfortunately, they've not been able to discover them. So my take is, wherever they are, they should root them out. They're on ground. And they have technology, they have a strength. They should go anywhere, wherever they're hiding themselves, root them out, get them out of there, rather than be killing innocent people. Because you see, again, like I said, in my intro, no human being is less important than the other. And so, trying to find them, I pray to find them on time, so that other innocent people will not continue to die, instead of the Hamas that all of us obviously do not want to continue to exist. So wherever they are, I pray that the Israelites are able to root them out as fast as possible.
Are you saying that those rifles, those rockets found in the underground portion of the hospital is inadequate? Are you saying that they're inadequate to convince the international community that indeed Hamas just may have a weapons, a military headquarters, in tunnels underneath, Gaza Strip, the Gaza Strip?
What I'm saying is, 1 second that this attack and war goes on, a lot of people are dying. And so I believe that the best way to solve this problem is to root out human beings. Show us these people, maybe, them gather together, or because I don't think even if they found them, the whole world would then say, oh, so kill the rest of, the people in Gaza, or kill those children, or kill other people because you have found those people. No, the idea is, can we root these people out, expel them, take care of the Hamas, so that other people who are not members of Hamas can have their life back? That's what we're saying. So whether you have arms and ammunition found and all of that, that, in my opinion, is not sufficient, to justify the death of millions, thousands of people, particularly children. So this graphic pictorial illustration of how people are dying on a daily basis is not something all of us want to continue to wake up and see. So whether on this side or on that side, what we want is a situation where, these perpetrators who are Hamas are found out, they're rooted out, and they are taken away so that we can have our lives back, because whatever or whoever live anywhere affects all of us. I mean, I'm sure that's the situation with everybody, and we just don't like the situation. It's not a very, very good one for humankind.
And that brings me to the next question, Mr. Adeyemo. When the IDF announced that it had taken control of northern Gaza, the expectation was that perhaps Israel would adopt a different approach in its continuation of the prosecution of this war. But what we've seen, according to reports now, is that it's dropping leaflets on the ground to communities, residents of communities in the east, asking them to evacuate. At least that's what we hear in the last 10 hours or so. Does this suggest and support the Prime Minister's position that Israel is going to take permanent security responsibility for the Gaza Strip after the war ends?
It's a dichotomy, because this is not just a situation that just came up overnight. Yes, all of us are referring to October 7, but we all know that it is historical. And, you know, there are a lot of story around the fact that the Israelis have wanted to ensure that you don't have militant groups ruling or having any sway in the Palestinian space. And in my opinion, I think that the Palestinians also have a responsibility in this area by ensuring that any point in time you don't have a situation where you have any militant group, you know, being the one that is ruling or having a sway in that area. So, because you see, whenever you have them having strength, the truth of the matter is you can be sure that whether now or tomorrow, they will cause havoc. They will cause mayhem. And so, Israelis wanting to completely take them out is not something that one can completely say is wrong, because the truth of the matter is, as long as groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the rest of them have some level of strength or power, it is dangerous for all of us in the world. And, you know, so wanting to wipe them out is not something that one can completely condemn. But unfortunately, what one is worried about is the execution, because already, if you hear a lot of reports, it seems that the Palestinians all over the world are feeling that they are being, you know, singled out, they're being separated, they are being treated as the bad people. And that's not what we want, because we really don't want divide anywhere in the world. And I've said this, and I'm going to say it again. Unfortunately, we then have Palestinians who are American Palestinians, who are Israeli Palestinians, who are European Palestinians. You have them spread all over the world. And so creating divide, no matter how small, is dangerous, because you see, you don't want this to continue. Because what you're having is, whenever there's a perception that they are being, discriminated against, you have more people joining them. You know, rather than reducing or bringing down the group, what you're having is you're having people being told that, look at the way you've been treated all over the world, and so they are becoming, you know, much stronger. You're having more of them, and we don't need any kind of people being seen as being criticized against. We want all of us one united nation, one united people, all of us being loved and living in peace and harmony. That's what we need, because we are so interwoven. We live amongst ourselves, we work amongst ourselves all over the world, and that, for me, we need to think about that seriously and find a way of finding a truce, a permanent truce at the end of the day.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Adeyemo, the danger in division, yet another important point for the leaders in the international community to reflect on at this time. We want to thank you very much for your time and contributions on the program. Mr. Al-Shifa Adeyemo is a public affairs analyst who joined us from Lagos. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And still to come on the program, Indonesian mural artist shows support for Palestinians through street works. More details in just a moment. They got there shortly after midnight on Thursday following their evacuation from Gaza to Egypt through the Rafah border gate. 13 others also arrived in Turkey to accompany the patients as they complete their treatment in a hospital in Ankara. The cancer patients were mainly being treated at a hospital in Gaza that was built with Turkey's support, but was rendered unusable after Israel's attack, according to Turkish Health Minister Fahrettin Koca. He added that Ankara is making efforts to bring more cancer patients and sick children to Turkey. Turkey is in contact with Israel and Egypt about setting up field hospitals on the Gazan side of the Rafah border crossing. Mourners in Israel held funerals for Lyle Hetzroni, 12, and her aunt Ayala Hetzroni, who were killed by Palestinian fighters during the October 7 attacks. 2 caskets draped in flowers and flags were lowered into the earth at Revivim on Wednesday, but only one of them contained a body. The remains of 12-year-old Lyle have not been recovered. Instead, her personal belongings were interred along her aunt. The Palestine Red Crescent Society has released footage of paramedic Shadi Al-Taif being reunited with his daughter following the evacuation of a hospital in Gaza. In the video shared on social media, Al-Taif was seen holding his daughter in his arms after a month apart while speaking with the press. According to Al-Taif, the hospital where he was stationed was completely evacuated. Over the weekend, Gaza's largest and second largest hospitals, Al-Shifa and Al-Quds, said they were suspending operations and announced they were closed to new patients. Meet 41-year-old Iwan Sofian, a mural artist who spends days painting pictures that remind one of the conflict taking place between Israel and the military group Hamas. He sprays scarlet red paint on a parapet along a busy street at Depok in Indonesia's West Java province. His latest artwork, the face of a child against the colors of a Palestinian flag. Like many others around the world, the 41-year-old Indonesian, who prefers to go by the name Awenk, was shocked by the Israel-Hamas conflict that began after Palestinian Hamas militants rampaged through southern Israel on October the 7th. Being so far away from the conflict, Awenk said he felt helpless watching the horrors play out on the news and decided to use his artwork to express his support for the Palestinians. A small group of other mural artists have since joined the project, creating various pieces along the low wall to show their solidarity with the Palestinians and call for a ceasefire in Gaza. With increased awareness of the conflict through their street art, Awenk says the artists could organize fundraisers to collect donations for authorized parties to deliver aid to people in Gaza. And that sums it up on the program today. Thank you for being there. Do join us again, same time tomorrow, when we'll bring you another edition of our continuing coverage of the Israel-Hamas conflict. I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.